Timecode is the ubiquitous standard for measuring the passage of time when working with professional video and audio. There are other mechanisms, there are other ways of measuring time, but it really is the standard you'll find in most places. And quite simply, it measures the hours, the minutes, the seconds, and the individual frames. Or in the case of professional audio, you might have, instead of frames, either milliseconds or samples. In the case of regular professional cameras, you'll probably have 48 thousandths of a second. When working on assembly edits and rough cuts, it's quite common to need to supply a version of your edit so far with timecode in the picture. So, for example, you can produce a DVD and someone can play that DVD and see the numbers on screen, or you could make a file and upload it to an FTP server for someone to download for international collaboration. Whatever the reason, you might well need to get those numbers into the shot. And there's a couple of ways of doing it. I'm going to show you how it works. In the effects panel here, I'm going to just start typing in time, and there's my timecode effect. And thankfully, this is an accelerated effect. If I drag and drop this onto a clip like this one here, you'll see right away I'm getting some timecode. I can go to my effect controls panel, and here I've got my timecode options. And I can do things like position it somewhere else on screen if I want. I can change the size of it. There we go. I can change the opacity of the background at least. The numbers are always going to be visible. The field symbol is there to tell me which field I'm on in my media. Now, this media is progressive, so I haven't got any fields. But if it was field-based media, that's the odd and the even lines displaying alternately, then I would have a little symbol here flashing to show me which field I'm looking at in any given moment in time. I think even if I play it, this symbol's not going to do anything. Then I've got the format. I can either have the SMPTE standard, that's the Society of Motion Picture Television Experts. That just means normal. I can do a frame count, which is just a number of frames. Or, let me deselect so you can see it without that icon over it. I can choose to have feet and frames for 16mm or feet and frames for 35mm. The way that film is often measured is by counting the number of feet and then counting the number of frames since the last foot. It's a bit like feet and inches on a tape measure, except that, of course, because 16mm has a smaller frame size, there are more frames per foot than there are in 35mm film, so you need to choose one or the other. And here we go, I'm 2 feet and 24 frames in. Increasingly, though, I understand that labs tend to use just a frame count, and they'll mark a 0-point frame and go from there, because they've got very, very frame-accurate hardware. They don't really need feet and frames. And here's where it starts to get interesting. I can use as my timecode source either the media, or I can, let me set this back to SMPTE, or I can choose the original clip timecode, or I can just generate some timecode and I can specify a starting point here. And I can even have an offset if I am using something like the clip timecode. I can say, well, I want you to start a little bit later or start a little bit earlier. I can also specify things like label text. I can have just the word clip there, or I can have a camera angle. And if I'm working on a multi-camera edit, Premiere Pro will tell the viewer which camera angle they're looking at. The problem I've got with this, I think that's all fairly straightforward, and obviously you're going to have whatever the needs are for your production. I might as well get rid of that field symbol on the end. And the problem is, of course, I've applied it to a single clip. What do I do when I get to the next clip? I suddenly don't have my effect. And there is an easy way to fix this. I could nest the sequence. I could put this sequence in another sequence and then put the timecode effect on top. And I've seen that being done before, but I'm going to select my clip here. I'm going to delete the timecode effect on my effect controls list. And I'm going to go about this a different way. Now, up until Premiere Pro CS 5.5, about the only way you could do this would be to go to the New Item button. And by the way, all of these options are under the File menu under New as well. I just tend to go to the New Item button because it's nearer. And here I would choose Transparent Video. And about the only use for Transparent Video was to do exactly this effect. It's one of those options that even experienced Premiere Pro editors would quietly just forget about because they've no idea what transparent video would do for them. Here I've got settings based on my current sequence. I'll click OK. I'm going to drag and drop this onto my sequence, and I'm going to trim this out so you can see Obviously, it's transparent, so it's not going to do anything. At this point, I can go to my effects, drag and drop my timecode on, and there we are. I've got the timecode from my sequence. Let's get rid of that field symbol, and I'm ready to show this to my client. I notice as well, I should point out, I forgot to mention the time display here. The time display is based on my current sequence, which is 30 frames per second drop frame. And that means that, in fact, the way drop frame timecode works is it's really 30 frames per second, but it plays back as if it were 29.97 frames per second. And that's because when NTSC video is broadcast, it's actually broadcast 1% slower than it's originally recorded at. And in order for you to know how long your sequence is, in order to be able to look at the timecode and know how long that will be when it's broadcast, you set your timecode to drop frame, identifiable because it has semicolons between the numbers instead of colons. You see there I've gone to non-drop frame. And by doing this, it means that if you see, in this case, for example, 31 seconds, actually with drop frame timecode, I haven't quite made it to 31 seconds yet on this particular timeline. If I played this back with the stopwatch here, it would take a little bit less than 31 seconds. But I know that when it comes to broadcasting, it will take 31 seconds. You'll notice, coincidentally, if you ever see PAL conversions of NTSC original movies, they sometimes seem to be playing quicker, and it's simply because they've changed the frame rate instead of doing a really high quality conversion. So it's not that they've cut anything out of the film, it's just the way they've conducted the conversion. One way or the other. Sometimes they get longer, sometimes they get shorter. If you're not working in NTSC, you're never going to be using drop frame timecode, so you can just breathe a sigh of relief and choose whatever the frame rate is. In fact, it should be set automatically for your sequence. So now I've got my timecode display, and this is going across multiple clips because I've put this effect onto my video too. And up to CS 5.5, this is the only way you could do this. Now the transparent video item has been largely replaced by the adjustment layer. This is new in PremiereProCS6. And if I put an adjustment layer down into my sequence and trim it out in the same way, I can put my effect on in exactly the same way, and I have exactly the same result. Again, I'm going to get rid of that field symbol because this media isn't field-based. What this means for the future of the transparent video item, I don't know. Certainly Adobe are going to want to keep it in the specification for Premiere Pro projects so that people with older projects can open them in the new version. But my advice is to just not bother with transparent video at all. You can use it on the timeline as something to trim against if you need to, but again, the trimming's been improved in Premiere Pro CS6 and you just don't really need that anymore. Sadly, transparent video has never been able to work in the way that an adjustment layer can. You can't apply other effects to transparent video and see the results. You see here, if I maybe do a simple color balance and then change the settings, absolutely no result whatsoever because transparent video isn't designed to be used as an adjustment layer. But, of course, adjustment layers are, and adjustment layers will work with timecode effect quite happily. One of the nice things about working with timecode on a layer of this kind is, of course, it's very, very easy for you to toggle the visibility off and on. So you could always add a video track way up the stack on your timeline that you're just not using. Lay down an adjustment layer, put the timecode effect on it, and turn off the visibility. And you can toggle it off and on whenever you need to, without it getting in the way too much of your sequence. So that's burning in timecode with Adobe Premiere Pro CS6.